So good morning to all of you, and good afternoon for some of you. Welcome. So I will do the program, but at the moment I thought of we'll listen to a Dhamma talk because I'm having a back problem, and yesterday also had to sit for a long time, and today also went to the cutting and came back just before, and after sitting for too long, it's not good for my back because I have a problem and I can feel it's very sore. So I'm going to lie down while I'm with you listening to the talk, and should be when the talk finishes, my back should have enough rest, and then I can sit and teach you, because I can't lie down and teach. It's not good. So what I have done, I have sent a Dhamma talk to you just before I send it, no?
Yes, I'm ready with that. Yes.
So, Bhante Punnaji is my teacher. So, this talk will answer a lot of your questions. So, let's listen to it together, and it will inspire me as well. And so it should quickly give me enough rest and relaxation, and I can then after the Dhamma talk, sit and talk to you and answer the questions, and we can have the discussion afterwards, okay?
Shall I share it now?
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
From the beginning, Bikrin Mahansa, or from where you sent it?
From the beginning. So pay attention. I don't, hang on, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yes.
Pause it, yeah. So I just want to let you know about Bhante Punnaji if you don't know who he is. He's my teacher, and Bhante Punnaji is not an ordinary monk, I would say. He's a very special true gem in the triple gem. So yeah, when you listen, pay attention. You may hear some things new or for the first time, but what he says with a reason. I'll tell you his background, then you might have more trust and faith to listen if you hear a new word or something, because he realized some of the Pali words have been mistranslated when they translate into English. So we are not getting the actual meaning given by the Buddha. So we go in a different tangent then. So he corrects them. He says, no, this needs to be corrected. Otherwise, people will not really benefit from the Dhamma. So when he's doing that, what is his qualifications? Well, he's been practicing, he learned Buddhism when he was a little child, and then he was practicing at the I'm practicing and teaching meditation. He was a doctor, and then he could not get ordained because his mother didn't want him to, so he waited until she passed away. Then after that, he went to Hamudru and then got ordained, and he was meditating in Island Hermitage. Then when someone invited to set up a Buddhist temple, the first temple in America, Madhya Hamudru sent Punnaji Hamudru, because he's fluent in English, he's fluent in science, everything. So, and he's very well established in practice. So Madhya Hamudru sent him to America. So from then his journey started over there, and then while he was there, he realized to teach this to the Westerners, you really have to have a good sound knowledge of their background, the philosophies, the parallel religion, psychology. So he has 2 PhDs while he was there. And he has written many, many books. Buddhist Mahavihara has published a lot of them. And recently, one of his disciples, Dr. Mahendra, he wrote a book called, it's the book that Mahendra sent me. You can't see, no? It's called Letting Go of the Self. And you can find it on Amazon. And I will send a photo to the group so you can get it from Amazon. This is a compilation of Bhante Punnaji's teachings, published a few months ago. Bhante Punnaji himself have written so many books, and last 10 years he spent in Malaysia. Venerable Dr. Kesari Dhammananda Hamdru invited Bhante Punnaji to come there and help him to spread Buddhism in that part of the continent. So when he arrived, unfortunately, Kirindi Dhammananda Hamdru passed away. So all the responsibilities were on Bhante Punnaji's shoulders. So he lived there until he passed away. Bhante Punnaji passed away in my monastery. He was in Sri Lanka. I was in Sri Lanka, and I was having a retreat on Friday. So Bhante arrived, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday at Tavanisalarana, and he was teaching people. And on Thursday also, Bhante taught people from morning to night, answering their questions and everything. The last sermons also on the internet. Then Friday early in the morning, Poya Day, it was the Vas Aradhana Day. He passed away. So he was nearly 90. So his knowledge and his practice, and the knowledge in the Pali, and his knowledge in psychology, and in the medicine, so about the brain, the neuroscience, and from every aspect, you know, he tried to connect to what Buddha taught and how it can be connected to the experience. And so whatever that he had understood and realized, so he wanted to share that. And he also saw where things have gone wrong. And when he sees where things have gone wrong, how they're being misinterpreted because people have not understood. One thing that he says very upfront, it's may not be easy for some people to accept, but which is true. Bhante Punnaji points out that people from England, English people, went to Sri Lanka to learn Buddhism with an agenda. Rhys Davids and his wife. Rhys Davids' father was a priest. So he sent his very intelligent son, who had already had a PhD, to Sri Lanka to study Buddhism, to find flaws so they can write against Buddhism. So he sent Rhys Davids to Sri Lanka. But later, after learning Buddhism, Rhys Davids writes to his father saying, well, you know, instead of me, no, he writes in a way saying, you know, I'm so impressed about what Buddha had taught. So I convert myself happily to become a Buddhist. Like that, he writes to his father. Then he became a Buddhist. So he wanted to share it with the Westerners. So he thought of translating the Buddha's teachings, which was in Pali, to English. So he had to find the monks who would teach him things in Sinhala and Pali, and hardly you can find a translator. A translator will be a lay person who don't have much knowledge, expert knowledge in the Dhamma, or who had not practiced very well. So whatever the translator translates what the Sinhala monk says to him, so he will understand that. That is the Dhamma. So like that, with all these, they translated Pali into English. And so there is lot of translations that can be better, that could have done better. So Bhante Punnaji corrects them, saying, if you continue to use these words, you will not be able to get to Nibbana, because it doesn't talk about how to reduce the stress, how to get rid of the stress, because they have not understood. They think it's a theory, dukkha dukkata hetuva dukkha nati kirima marga, but it's something that you do practically. Here and now, you have to reduce your stress, get rid of your stress. You need to be able to figure out the stress, the dukkha, how it comes to be, and how you can get rid of it. What is the method? How do you practice the Arya Ashtangika Marga? So, when I met Bhante Punnaji in 2007, when he was teaching, you know, it was a very radical teaching. I had to throw out everything that I knew, what people have taught me. But because I also had a science background, what he said really resonated with me. I felt, yes, that makes sense. That is, you know, that's how the brain works. So we have to somehow tie what Buddha taught to this. Buddha was the best neuroscientist. Buddha was talking about the perception and how these senses are working, how the brain is working, how the mind is working, how the experience come to be. This is neuroscience. This is how your brain and the body works. So without knowing that, you cannot understand what's happening. You can't understand how your experience is. You can't understand what is anicca dukkha anatta. You need to understand how the senses are working. What is this rupa vedana sanya sankara vinyana? So then when he was teaching, you know, it started to make sense. I have not understood Paticca beforehand, because they talk about 3 lifetime, 12 lifetime, blah, blah, blah. But it was theory. When Bhante Punnaji taught it, it started to make sense, and I understood. And then ever since I, you know, have learned from him, and he has been my teacher, and I was under him. Before that, I was following, you know, Thai tradition, Burmese tradition, Ajahn Brahm, and I had many, many teachers. But Bhante Punnaji was not a normal person. So you can listen to this Dhamma and you will sense it. That when someone teaches something from the book, the borrowed knowledge, you can sense. When someone teaches from the heart, from their understanding, you can sense it. And you can sense when Bhante Punnaji teaches who he is. So let's listen to this. And after that, I'm sure you will have many questions. Please write them down, and I'm quite happy to answer. Okay, so pay attention. Even though you don't understand or it doesn't agree with you, it's okay. As Buddhists, we need to have a balanced mind where we should be able to listen to the things that's agreeable and disagreeable. Only after listening, we can come to the conclusions by using our own mind. If we don't even listen to something, then how could we know? So it's very important that we do not buy into it, but we don't reject. First, we listen. After that, after processing it in here, then we come to the conclusion. We make decisions. Okay? So let's listen to it. And then later, you can ask questions, any question you have. Okay? Pay attention and listen.
I will share.
Thank you.
when we speak about the teaching of the Buddha, we must remember that there are different levels of teaching and there are different levels of practice. So this doesn't mean that everyone should be practicing at the same level. So in our series of talks, first we spoke about devotion. That is the basic level of practice, devotion. And devotion really is the devotion to the ideal of perfection. So at that level you are not perfect, you have not become perfect, but you are thinking of this ideal of perfection and desiring to become perfect. So there we pay respects to the ideal. And the ideal is seen as the Buddha. So the Buddha becomes this ideal and goal in life. But we have not reached that goal. So this is aspiring to that goal. So at the second level, we have the practice of good conduct, which is the first step in becoming good, is to practice good behavior. So we are trying to correct the behavioral part, where we don't come in conflict with other people and we do things which are considered to be good, just and fair, that sort of thing. Good relationships. And then we go to the next step, which is the purification of the mind. So purifying the mind, which leads to the true happiness. So this is a high level, that is the third stage. So everyone is not able to practice at that level. So it is mainly those who renounce the world, the worldly life, the materialistic life, and those who become monks or nuns. These are the people who will be able to practice that in full. The ordinary householder or layman is not able to attain those 4 jhanas. To attain the 4 jhanas is a very high level of practice. So today, those who practice at that level are called mystics. So the mystics are at a higher level of practice. And even higher level than that is the level of the enlightened or awakened people, awakening to the realities of life. Now, that is the level that I am going to speak about today, or this talk. Now, although we may be happy by purifying and calming the mind, our mind may be tranquil and happy, but we still have a problem. And that problem is we begin to grow old, we begin to fall sick and die. All religions begin to talk about eternal happiness and eternal life Why are they talking about eternal happiness, eternal life? Because our happiness is impermanent and life is impermanent. So this is a problem that people try to solve through the practice of religion. And most religions, the solution is in the next life, after death. They believe that they can go to heaven where they'll have eternal happiness and eternal life. That is just a belief and a hope. It's based on hope and belief. But here the Buddha speaks about this same problem, but the solution is not in the next life. It's here and now. It can be solved in the present. And the way to solve this is not to take refuge in some external supernatural power, but to take refuge in yourself. This is the mature way of doing it. It is the child that goes out to seek help in others. But the mature person is a person who begins to help himself or herself. So that self-reliance is the main thing in maturity. So this is a way of practicing religion in this self-reliant way, which is the humanistic way. The humanistic way of practicing religion, instead of the theistic way where we begin to depend on an external God or the creator of the world or some supernatural being. Humanistic way is to make use of the human intelligence and the human efforts, human energy to solve the problems. Today the world is gradually moving towards the humanistic way. This is why people tend to give up their religious dogmas and begin to think on their own and also depend on modern science and technology to solve their problems. That's the humanistic way. So as the human beings advance and evolve, religion will automatically become humanistic. So today, Buddhism is that religion that is not, Buddhism is really not another religion among other religions. It is a critique of religion, where religion is examined and understood. And this way, the religious problem, which is the problem of existence, it is because we exist that we have this problem. So it is the problem of existence that religion is trying to solve. Now the problem of existence is what the Buddha called dukkha, or suffering. And that is that we are all born, and from the time we are born, we begin to grow old. The aging process. At first, the young child begins to become an adult, But it doesn't end there. We go beyond that and we begin to grow old and then ultimately fall sick and die. This is the problem. We don't like that. People celebrate their birthdays, but they don't celebrate the death day. But the problem is, if we are born, we always have to die also. We don't realize that. When we celebrate the birthday, we don't realize that we have started approaching death. The only reason that we could celebrate the birthday is to celebrate the fact that we have not died yet. We have been able to survive so many years. But still, that itself becomes the cause of our unhappiness. So all this means that our life is impermanent. Not only life, everything in the world is impermanent. So the Buddha pointed out that the way to solve this problem is to understand existence. It is because we don't understand what we call existence that this has become a problem. We all believe that we are existing. But is it a fact? No one questioned that. If a thing is continually changing, say like the wave in the ocean, the wave is all the time changing. It's a change. So if things are changing all the time, do they really exist? That's the problem. In ancient times, the philosophers were talking about this change. What they saw was, they thought there was some permanence in the change. They used two words to talk about this. One was being, and the other one was becoming. The change was called becoming. And the permanence was called being. Now what this means is, if you have a golden ring or something like that, you can melt that gold and convert it into something else. So that means the ring has disappeared and something else has taken the place. It has changed. But there is something that has not changed, which is gold. Gold has not changed. So that change was called becoming. That means the ring became something else. So the change was a becoming. But the gold was still being there in the same way as gold. so that the permanent aspect was seen as being. Now, when these Western scholars, they came to study Buddhism, he saw the Buddha speaking about impermanence. So when they saw the Buddha speaking about impermanence, they thought he's talking about becoming. So there is a word that the Buddha used, power. The word power is being, not becoming. But these translators thought, because the Buddha is speaking about impermanence, he cannot be talking about being, he must be talking about becoming. Power as becoming. But that was a mistake. The Buddha was talking about being here. It is because we are thinking that being for the Buddha was not a reality. Being was a concept. The Buddha saw this as a concept, that we form the concept of being. We are changing from the time we are born. We are in a process of change. We keep on changing. The person who is born is not the same person who dies in old age. The body has changed. The mind has changed. Everything has changed. It's something else. But we don't think like that. We think it is the same person who died. So that concept of being, which is the continuity of existence, that is what is creating the problem. Because I am being, I am born, then I grow old, and then I die. So the I is always there, the being. So as long as we think like that, then we are thinking about the change and the impermanence of our being. And that is how we become unhappy about it, because we don't want that. Because we are being, we want to continue to be. And we want to continue to be young. No, we don't want to continue as old people. That's a problem. So being is a static concept. A static concept in a dynamic reality. A dynamic reality, we are trying to cling on to a static concept, which is an illusion. So the static concept is really emotional. It is an emotion that wants us to believe in the existence or being. Whereas when we think and reason out, we see the impermanence of these things. There is no real being. But our emotions tell us, no, there is a being. I want to be. So we cannot face death. So when we cannot face death, we have to somehow believe that even when the body dies, I will still remain. Maybe go to heaven or go to hell and remain somehow. So we want that permanence, which is all emotion. So actually what is happening is the emotion is coming in conflict with our reason. The emotion and reason are in conflict. And when emotion and reason are in conflict, what happens? Emotion always wins. That's what is happening. That's the point. So therefore we become unhappy as a result. Because the emotion is being frustrated, disappointed. So we become unhappy. So what this emotion is doing is, what the Buddha pointed out was that this emotion is saying, this is mine. It is the attachment to this body. The emotion becomes attached to the body and say, this body is mine. This body is mine, this mind is mine, these feelings are mine, this consciousness is mine, these thoughts are mine. We begin to personalize. And what we call the self is the sum total of all that we call mind. All that is mine has been personalized. And through the process of personalizing, we arrive at the personality. That personality is myself. Because I have personalized. If I didn't personalize the body, if I didn't personalize the mind, if I didn't personalize my feelings, my thoughts, my consciousness, then there will be no personality. So the personality came into being through personalization. And why do I personalize this? Because of my emotion. It is the emotion that is doing the personalizing. That emotion is what is called tanha, usually translated as craving. Tanha is the emotion. So it is that emotion that does the personalizing. And the personalizing results in the personality. And once the personality has come into being, I have come into being. So I come into existence, not because of birth. I have come into existence because of person life. This is the important thing to understand. Normally we think I came into existence because I was born. I was not born. The body was born. The birth of the body is simply the birth of the body. But the birth of the body became my birth because I personalized the body. If I didn't personalize the body, the birth of the body cannot be my birth. And if I didn't personalize the body growing old is not my growing old. And if I didn't personalize the body, the death of the body is not my death. You see, whatever is happening to the body, I say this is happening to me. Why? Because I have personalized it. So it is this personalizing process which is called upadana, usually translated as clinging or grasping. This is not just ordinary clinging or grasping. This is personalized. And through this process of personalizing, the personality comes into being, or I come into being. This is why Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. Naturally, when you think, I think, if you say, I think, then of course, the next is I am. So I think is the personalizing of the thinking process. When you say, I think, and therefore I am is the personality coming into being. So the important thing to understand is the only way to get out of this suffering is to learn to depersonalize what has been personalized. But as I said earlier, it cannot be done by simply rational thinking because the emotion is involved. It is necessary to get rid of the emotion before we can even understand it properly. So the emotion must be understood. What is an emotion? The emotion is not something that is built inside. That as this is a mistake that Sigmund Freud made. He thought that emotion is something built inside. You can't do anything about it other than find some kind of expression for this emotion. We have to satisfy the emotion some way or other. So he also realized that we cannot always satisfy these emotions or gratify the emotion. So the only thing that can be done is to sublimate the emotion. That is to convert the emotion to something else which is acceptable. Now, if I'm angry, the anger is an emotion, and I want to kill a person because I'm angry. So, but then that's not a good thing. So we have to sublimate that. to express that in a good way. That is what is called sublimation. That is the solution that he found. But the problem is, that is not going to solve the problem really, because he wrote a book called Civilization and its Discontents. To be civilized is to sublimate the emotions. That is how we become civilized. But in becoming civilized, we become unhappy people because we are discontent. There is no real contentment. But Buddha solved this problem in a different way. This is important to understand. But the Buddha pointed out was, this emotion is not something built inside, seeking satisfaction or gratification. Emotion comes from outside. That's the important thing. It's not something that comes from inside and goes out, but it is something that starts from outside and comes in. So, when Freud used the word instinct, which means is the emotion built inside, the Buddha used the word asava. Asava is also very badly translated today. Very often you find it translated as canker. What is a canker? It's like a sore or something like that. It's coming from the root through. Through is to flow. It's a flowing. Asava means flowing in. That is why some people translate asava as influx. But I translate asava in a more meaningful way. And that is influence. Influence is also flowing in. So asava is really a flowing in. How does it flow in? It is simply starting with the stimulation of the senses. When the senses are stimulated, nerve impulse goes from the sense organ to the brain. There is also flowing in. And then the brain begins to make a decision about what is being seen. At first, there is seeing of something, the process of perception. And then you begin to interpret what you have perceived through the process of conception. And once you have interpreted what you have seen, then according to that interpretation, a message is sent to the glands, and the glands begin to secrete a hormone, and that hormone begins to make certain parts of the body overactive or some parts underactive, and this way a change occurs in the whole body. That is what we call an emotional arousal. If it is anger, adrenaline flows into the blood. If it comes in the form of a sexual desire, a sexual hormone flows into the blood. So this is how it happens. So it all starts from outside, stimulation of the senses. So when the senses are stimulated, this whole reaction occurs. And when the emotion is aroused, tension occurs in the muscles. Muscles become tensed. And this tension is like the bow and the arrow. You pull the string with the arrow, it becomes more and more tense. The more tense it becomes, the more it wants to release the arrow. And then there is the action taking place. So in a similar way, the gun and the trigger is also a similar thing. So in a similar way, this whole reaction of the organism results in action, which is the behavior. So if emotion is something that is coming from outside, it is possible to stop that. It is possible to stop that reaction. You don't have to be trying to satisfy the emotions or gratify the emotions. The important thing is to learn to stop the reaction and calm the mind. So the calmness and tranquility of the mind is the solution to the problem. Now that is what we were talking about earlier also. So this tranquility of mind was the solution of the Buddha, not sublimation. That's the difference. And with the tranquility comes the relaxation of the body muscles also. That's the important thing to understand. So that emotional excitement leads to the personalizing, and the personalizing leads to the personality, and the personality leads to the birth, old age, disease, death. All the suffering comes from there. This is why the Buddha said, tanha is the cause of this suffering, which is the emotion.
No, awesome.
And the emotion can be brought to an end through the proper technique, which was that supernormal eightfold way. So we have to go beyond the normal to supernormal state to solve that problem. So this was the ending of the problem of dukkha or suffering. And this can be done only by calming the mind, But the mind cannot be calmed without calming our behavior. So the first step is to calm the behavior. And the behavior cannot be calmed if our goal is not calmness. If our goal is simply seeking sensual pleasure, we cannot calm the mind or the behavior. So this is why this whole problem of existence can be solved only by going gradually. First the devotion, then the control of behavior, the good life, sila, it's called sila. The devotion is called saddha. Saddha, sat means what is good and true. Dha is to uphold. So that is the devotion. And then comes the sila, which is the good behavior. And then comes samadhi, which is the purity and tranquility of mind. And after samadhi comes the understanding of the problem. This understanding of the problem is really the solution of the problem. When we have understood that there is no being, although we think there is being. So this is a paradigm shift. It's a paradigm shift. But in this process of becoming aware of this delusion, it is really a maturity of our consciousness. The consciousness has to evolve. Normally, all animals are just conscious of a world. They see, hear, smell, taste, touch. Through the senses, we become conscious of a world. That is consciousness. But this consciousness is taking place without our knowledge. We are not in control of this. It's just happening. It's happening due to the presence of the necessary conditions. When the necessary conditions are there, it happens. When the necessary conditions are not there, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
We are not doing anything. In other words, it is an unconscious process. It is from a state of unconsciousness that consciousness comes into being.
True. Ignorance is a better word, I think.
But that consciousness is actually what is called cognition. That is seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. This is cognition. But this whole process is occurring in an unconscious state. So, if we want to stop this process, we have to become conscious of that. by becoming conscious of that this process can be stopped. So this is the important thing to understand. So this whole process of the practice is an effort to become conscious of the process of consciousness itself. It is not trying to become conscious of something outside. It is trying to become conscious of the process of consciousness. So that is the paradigm shift. So this paradigm shift cannot occur automatically. You have to go through that process, which has to be done consciously. The growth, this is the growth of consciousness. Consciousness grows fully only when consciousness has become conscious of itself. That is the ultimate point in the evolution of consciousness. So when we speak of the Buddha, we are speaking of a person who has evolved to that highest level, where a person becomes conscious of consciousness. That is the meaning of nirvana. So nirvana is not simply calming the mind. That simply calming the mind is samadhi. But when we speak of nirvana, we are speaking about the growth and evolution of the consciousness to the point where this consciousness becomes conscious of itself. And when that has happened, that emotional agitation, excitement will never come back. So that is becoming calm while being active. The action is there. It's not inactivity. But in the samadhi state, it is all inactive. The calmness. But you can be active and at the same time be calm inside, because the emotional excitement never takes place. This is the important thing to understand. And in this process, the perceptual process is going on. Conceptual process is going on. But the emotional process has stopped. And the conceptual and perceptual process is aware of itself.
That's why the emotion isn't there.
And because the perceptual process is aware of itself, It sees through the process. And therefore, when you perceive a book, for example, there is a book in front of me, and I perceive the book as normal people do. But at the same time, what you are perceiving is not just the book. What you are perceiving is the perception of the book. So instead of saying there is a book in front of me, you can say, there is the seeing of a book. So I think this is a good time to stop. You can stop here and you can ask questions here. Talking about the Paticca Samuppada and several other things. And now today we are going to talk about the fundamental things that we should all know. And in doing that, we'll be going through the same sort of things. And it is important to go through these things from time to time so that it gets into your mind properly. And so this sutra that we have got today, Sammaditthi Sutra, it is coming from the chief disciple of the Buddha, Sariputta. You may be familiar with that name, Sariputta. And the topic that he is talking about is simply what is called the right view. So we have been talking about the right view. That means the right way of understanding the teachings of the Buddha. And that is what we want to do. And that is why you are here to know that. Now, this sutra, we are not able to go through the whole sutra in one day. This is a fairly long sutra. And we have to go through that in stages. And this means this paper that you have got, everyone got the paper. You have to read not only read now, it should be read at home also. And you should read it not once. You should read it several times. Because partly the translation, the way it is translated, the real meaning doesn't come out. So this is why it is necessary to discuss this stage by stage. So we have to discuss it through several sessions. So if you read this, you will see that as usual, that every sutra, what is called a sutra, comes from the word sutta. Sutta means listening. That means in ancient times, people didn't read books. They were mainly listening to the teacher. And by listening to the teacher, you begin to learn things. So that is why it is something that has been spoken, and the students have been listening. So the ancient time, education was done that way. And not only listening, they also memorize what has been said. So that is how the learning took place. So the students listen, sit around the teacher and listen. And so this sutra begins by saying, "Thus have I heard." Thus have I heard means this is what I have heard by listening. And so they say, on one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi, in Jetha's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Savatthi is the name of the city or town or whatever you call it. It's like saying Kuala Lumpur, Savatthi. In Jetha's Grove, and in this Savatthi, there was a forest called the Jetha's Grove. It was an area where there were trees. And in the Anathapindika's park, Anathapindika is the name of a person who donated a piece of land and built a monastery there for the Buddha and his disciples. But the Buddha never stayed in one place like a temple. The Buddha, his temples are a modern thing. At that time, they didn't have this thing called temple. It is a monastery. Monastery is simply an area where some buildings have been made for the monks to stay. Otherwise, at that time, the followers of the Buddha didn't have even houses or buildings. They didn't live inside houses. They stayed mainly under trees. They were sitting under trees or sometimes even lying down. But it was just a collection of leaves, and over the leaves they were sitting. They didn't have cushions. They didn't have chairs. They were just living under trees, and sometimes not even under trees. So that was the way the disciples of the Buddha were living. Now, on this occasion, they were living in this Anathapindika's park. There the Venerable Sariputta addressed the bhikkhus, friends, and Venerable Sariputta said, one of right view is said, friends. That means they spoke of a thing called right view. Now, some of these words that are used here in the translation can sometimes be misleading. So I have to read the Pali of this, which is the language used by the Buddha. The Pali word is Sammaditthi. Sammaditthi is translated as right view. Now, I have a different translation. Because I want to bring the meaning out properly. The word Samma, I translate as harmonious. Why do I use the word harmonious? Samma means harmony. And what is harmony? It is the opposite of conflict. That means a view that doesn't come in conflict with other people. You see? Now, if someone says, this world was created by a God, there will be other people who will say, no, we don't believe in that. That means that is a view that comes in conflict with another view. Now, this is a view that doesn't come in conflict with anyone. Because it talks about harmony. The harmonious view. But I don't even call it a view. I call it a perspective. Harmonious perspective. What is the meaning of perspective? Now, when you want to take a picture and you use a camera, you want to hold the camera from a certain angle. The picture depends on the angle from which you hold the camera. And that angle is the perspective. So there are views that can come in conflict with other people. But this is the view that brings about harmony, not conflict. So the important thing is, what is conflict? We have to understand that all animals and even human beings they are all self-centered. You are thinking of, I want this, I want that, and also begins to think, I am. I want to be better than others. So there is competition also. But when you begin to compete, are we in harmony? We are not going to be in harmony, we will be in conflict. You and I, we begin to fight. That is conflict. You understand? So, we are talking about a harmonious perspective. We are looking at the world from a harmonious perspective. To understand this properly, the Buddha used an analogy, a story. once a king wanted to understand the meaning of this harmony. So he asked the people to bring the elephant, because those days they had elephants. They made use of elephants for various purposes. So they brought the elephant and they asked them to bring some blind people who were blind from birth, that they were not blind people who were able to have eyes earlier and later became blind. But this is born from birth, born blind from birth. And when those blind people came, he asked those blind people to touch the elephant and describe the elephant. So one man touched the leg and said, the elephant is like a tree. Another man touched the body and said, the elephant is like a wall. Another man touched the ears and said, the elephant is like a fan. And like that, they touched different parts of the elephant and described in different ways. And then they began to explain what they found. And they were all different. And ultimately they started quarreling. Because they said, I touched the elephant myself with my own hands, and this is what the elephant is like. The other person also said, I also touched with my own hand, but the elephant is like this. So they started quarreling. But of course, the king and all the others who had eyes to see saw that they were all correct because they were describing what they touched. But they were not wrong. So this is why the Buddha is talking about a harmonious perspective. A harmonious way is to look at things from all sides. You are not only looking at things from one angle, you are able to see from all angles, and then only you are able to find out or make a statement where you don't come in conflict with other people. So it's very important to understand this harmonious perspective. That is the meaning of, it's not just right view. If you say right view, then people with a different view might say, no, it is the wrong view. Then you begin to fight and quarrel. So here the important thing is to understand right view. The harmonious perspective. And this he says, whose view is straight and unwavering confidence in the Dhamma has arrived is true Dhamma. So it is this true Dhamma, but it is not just true Dhamma. Even to say it is true is to come in conflict with other people who will say it is not true. This is why the Buddha really never spoke about a thing called truth. Even to talk about a thing called truth is to come in conflict with others. So this is why these things have to be translated in the proper way. Now you begin to understand why I begin to translate in a different way. Some people criticize me for translating in a different way. I am trying to bring out the true meaning of what the Buddha is talking about. It is only when it is properly translated that the meaning comes out in the proper way. So it is very important to translate this in the proper way. So this disciple of the Buddha, the chief disciple, is a person who says exactly what the Buddha wants to say. Because he is not only just a person who has just learned from the Buddha, he is a person who is what is called an Arahant. Arahant is a person who has become fully enlightened. So he speaks in the right way. So then these people who are listening to him said, we would come from a far away to learn from the Venerable Sariputta the meaning of this statement. It would be good if Venerable Sariputta would explain the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from him, the bhikkhus will remember it. So that means these people said that they would even come from a long distance to listen to the great teachings of the Buddha. That's the main thing. That means they are valuing the teachings. That is what it means. Now, then he says, when friends, a noble disciple understands the wholesome, the unwholesome, and the root of the unwholesome, and the wholesome and the root of the wholesome, in that way, he is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has unwavering confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So there are two things, what he calls wholesome and unwholesome. Now again, it is important to understand what is meant by this wholesome and unwholesome. The Pali word is kusala and akusala. The word kusala and akusala, I think the simple way to understand that is simply good and bad. Now we have two words called good and bad. Now there is a branch of Western philosophy which talks about good and bad. And that is called ethics. Ethics is the branch of philosophy that talks about good and bad. So here, this is what this Venerable Sariputta is trying to talk about. What is it that we call good and what is it that we call bad? This is the topic. Now, when we talk about good and bad, this is what the main topic in all religions. All religions are talking about good and bad. Why do people talk about this thing called good and bad? Because people are in conflict. Because people are self-centered, selfish. We are not only interested in just myself, but all my properties and all my relatives, my family, my nation. And this is why there are wars in the world. Because people are fighting and quarreling. This conflict is what is the bad thing. Conflict is the bad thing. So what is good is kindness, compassion, and treating others well. That is to become unselfish. But why are people selfish? The selfishness comes from a very important fact. The fact is that every animal, not only animals, even plants, and also human beings are born into this world with a body. When you say you are born, what does it mean? You have come out of the mother's womb, and then what has come out is the body. And that body has 5 senses. It has eyes, it has ears, it has nose, it has a tongue, and it has the body becomes an organ with the feeling of touch. So these are the 5 senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and the body. And in these 5 senses, we begin to experience 3 kinds of feelings. 3 kinds of feelings: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral feeling. The pleasant feeling we like, the unpleasant feeling we don't like. The neutral feeling we don't like or dislike, but we just let it be there. And then, when we begin to like things, so what we like, we want to have more and more of what we like. And what we hate, we don't want to have. We want to get rid of what we hate. And what is neutral, we just let it be there. But it is that neutral feeling that makes us think of existence, being. It is just there. So we let it be there. Let it exist. And existence is also something that we want. You see, it's very important to understand, and it is because we like things and hate things, and we want things to exist. And that itself, when we want, desire, and hate things, that desire and hatred we personalize and say, this is mine. It is my desire, my hatred, my liking. And the moment you say mine, what is mine becomes myself. and we create a self. And a self that exists. And the self is not something pleasant. It is not something unpleasant. And the self is seen as something neutral. So when you think of yourself, you are thinking of a neutral feeling. And if that neutral feeling self wants pleasant things and hates unpleasant things. And that is how all the selfishness comes. And that desiring things and hating things, we quarrel with others to get what we want. And because we begin to come in conflict with other people, we have two ways of behavior. Good behavior and bad behavior. So the good and the bad is based on this. Our desires and hatreds become the root of what is good and what is bad. And what is bad becomes when we harm others or hurt others, fight with others, or kill others. That is what is called bad. And sometimes we begin to take what is belonging to other people. When we take what is belonging to other people, it takes two forms, which we call stealing and robbing. Stealing is taking something without the other person knowing it. Robbing means we can hold a gun at the person, frighten a person, fight with the person and take. That is called robbing. So stealing and robbing. And then the other thing is sexual activities that come in conflict with others. Sexual activities come in conflict with others means that if you are married or if you have a friend and someone else comes and takes that friend away from you, then that is the wrong kind of sexual activity. So you see, that is in terms of behavior, having the action. That is what we call when we recite the 5 precepts, we are talking about these things. And then in terms of speech, if we tell lies, if we use harsh speech, or if we carry tales around, or if we speak unpleasant words and unpleasant things that makes people unhappy, all that is wrong speech. So these are the things that we have to understand when we talk about good and what is bad. So good and bad comes from our behavior. It depends on how we deal with other people in society, our social ethics. How we behave with other people, how we treat other people, not only human beings, even animals, how we relate to animals. Now, a very important thing is that human beings and even animals begin to use other animals as food. Normal human beings don't eat other human beings, but they eat animals, which is also not the correct thing to do. But still, the problem is that from ancient times, people have been eating animals and plants. And plant is also another kind of life. You see, some animals eat plants only, some animals eat other animals. And every animal goes in search of food. And while they are going in search of food, that animal can become the food of another animal. You see, this is how the world is. If it is a God who created the world, the God has created the world in such a way that one animal is living by eating other animals. Or even plants. Plant is also a living being. So you see, this is the way. So, this is why we have to think of these things that are happening in the world. And what we call good is living in a peaceful way. What is called bad is coming in conflict with others. we have to understand a very important thing. All these bad actions or bad behavior, what is the root of this bad behavior? The root of this bad behavior comes in three forms. That is what the Buddha pointed out. What he called Lobha, Dosa, and Maha, which I translate as lust, hate, and delusion. Lust, hate, and delusion. What is lust? Lust is the desire for pleasure.
I think I hope you all enjoyed it. Did you?
It was very good, Bhikkhuni. From where I am right now, the meanings, the explanations were very clear and deep, simple to understand. I was wondering, it was my device. I couldn't hear the explanation to ask a verse very clearly. So perhaps next time we can talk about it.
Yeah, more than talking, you can listen to it. So now you
Okay.
can start listening to Bhante Punnaji's talks. As you can see, I'm not near him, so you better get it from my teacher. Teacher's explanation is always better than the student. So now you have direct access to the teacher. You can listen. And then if you don't understand, then you can ask me. How's that?
Perfect. Yes, that would be good.
Yeah. So you can search on the internet. You just type Bhante Punnaji's name and there'll be so many talks. And depending on what you want to listen, the subject, you listen. And then also his books are available through the Buddhist Maha Vihara, Brixfield, Kuala Lumpur. It's called BMV, Buddhist Maha Vihara, Kuala Lumpur, Brixfield, Kuala Lumpur. Anyway, if you shall have any questions, you can ask. Because I have a program starting soon. But I'm quite happy to answer if you have some burning questions from what you heard. So you don't have to continue doubting things, but I can help you to clear some things. If things agreed, all good. But if there's something that didn't agree with you, then you're welcome to ask. Do you have anything? No? Everyone seemed to be silent. That means you don't have any questions. So did you all understand what Bhante Punnaji was saying? Did you all understand?
Yes, Bhikkhuni Mahansa very much. Savitri.
Crystal clear, no?
Yes.
Yes.
He's always very clear in his explanation. Very good.
Yes. Yes, in this time, at this time, you know, in this era, I haven't seen any monk in that caliber in this sasana. But unfortunately, with the Sri Lankan monks, they didn't understand him. They didn't see his value. They didn't really understood, or they didn't really study him. They didn't, because he was very humble. He was just like, you know, like this. And with how the sasana is going, they just didn't care. So he was unheard among the Sri Lankans. But when he was in Malaysia, the Chinese really appreciated. And I think they were
used
the
to
one
come
who...
to Sri Lanka. No? He used to.
Yeah. He visits Sri Lanka every year for a few weeks. That's why I even built the retreat center, because when he came to Sri Lanka, he wanted to do retreats, but there was no retreat center we could hire and do it the way he wanted. Those days, anyway, the center, only Galaha was there, and I think Paramita Center was there, and there is no other retreat centers that we could even hire. So I thought, well, I'll build one, and that's how I did the Nisalarana Sri Lanka. And you can see some photos and things on our Katina program. If you watch, it's now on YouTube. You can watch it, Sri Lanka Nisalarana. At the beginning of the presentation, they showed a few photos of it, and Bante Punnaji Memorial Center as well. So if you like, I will put the link to it as well. So you can come there.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, then if you don't have any questions, let's finish it. Let's share the merits. So whatever the merits that we have generated today by developing our understanding, deepening our understanding, purifying the mind and developing the wisdom. May all these merits bring causes and conditions for all of our departed relatives who are in need of merits, and also may the devas and all beings, may these merits benefit everyone, all unseen beings, and may they find peace of mind and happiness wherever they are. And may these merits bring causes and conditions for them also to find good births and to background, to be able to listen to the Dhamma and be able to understand the Dhamma and find the freedom from suffering. So may these merits bring them also causes and conditions to find the supreme bliss of Nibbana. And also let's share the merits with, also have the aspiration that may all the merits that we generated today bring causes and conditions for us to not to associate with the wicked and the foolish, but only to find the association with the wise and the good and the wise until we attain Nibbana. Also, let's make the aspiration that may all the merits that we generated today bring causes and conditions for us to attain Nibbana as soon as possible. Also, I would like to share the merits with Sohaniputta and with all of you for joining, and anyone who helps this to run this program. And may all of you and all of your parents, teachers, relatives, children, siblings, grandchildren, friends, and family members, and may everyone benefit from these merits. And may all of you find good health and long life. And may all these merits bring all of your good aspirations, and may all your good dreams come true. And one fine day, may you all penetrate into the Four Noble Truths and attain Nibbana. If possible, in this very life, may you all be well, comfortable, peaceful and happy. Sukhi hotu. Theruvan saranai. We'll meet